My name is Elena Martinez, and I'm 28 years old. Standing in that opulent ballroom 3 months ago, watching my sister Victoria's face strain of color as Manhattan's most powerful CEO wrapped his arm around my waist and introduced me as his wife to the entire charity gala, I finally understood what sweet revenge truly tasted like. But this moment of triumph came at the end of a journey that shattered everything I thought I knew about family loyalty, love, and the price of keeping secrets that were never meant to protect me in the first place. Hey everyone! Before we dive into this absolutely wild family drama that literally changed my entire life, I'm curious, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you're ready for a story that has more twists than a pretzel factory, smash that like button and hit subscribe because trust me, you're going to want to follow along for every shocking detail of how my pathetic life became the ultimate revenge story. Now let's get into how one night at a charity gala turned my world completely upside down. Growing up in the Martinez household meant living in Victoria's shadow, and let me tell you, it was a pretty damn dark place to spend your childhood. Victoria was everything our parents wanted in a daughter: valedictorian, homecoming queen, full scholarship to Harvard, and later, a successful investment banker pulling in 7 figures before she turned 30. Meanwhile, there was me, the artistic one, which in our family was basically code for the disappointment. My parents, Miguel and Carmen Martinez, had immigrated from Mexico with nothing but dreams and determination. They built a successful chain of authentic Mexican restaurants across California, pouring every ounce of their energy into creating generational wealth. But with that success came expectations that felt like concrete blocks tied around my ankles every time I tried to swim toward my own dreams. Elena, Mija, when are you going to get serious about your life? My mother would ask every Sunday dinner, her eyes darting toward Victoria's latest achievement certificates hanging on the wall like trophies in a shrine. Victoria just bought another investment property. What have you done this week besides paint pictures that nobody wants to buy? The sting of those words never dulled, not even after years of hearing variations of the same theme. Victoria would sit there, perfectly manicured nails wrapped around her wine glass, offering me that sympathetic smile that somehow managed to be both condescending and apologetic at the same time. Mom, Elena's just finding herself. Not everyone can be as focused as I am. God, I hated that phrase. Finding herself. Like I was some lost tourist wandering around with a broken GPS instead of a grown woman trying to build a career in graphic design and illustration. But the truth was, I was struggling. Really struggling. While Victoria was closing million-dollar deals and vacationing in the Maldives, I was eating ramen noodles for dinner and wondering if I'd ever be able to afford my own apartment instead of sharing a cramped studio with my college roommate Sarah. The family gatherings were the worst. Victoria would breeze in wearing designer everything, talking about her latest client or her newest romantic conquest, always some successful businessman or entrepreneur who looked like he stepped out of a magazine. She collected successful men the way some people collect stamps, and our parents ate it up with a spoon. Victoria's dating that tech startup founder now, Mom would announce to anyone within earshot. He's worth millions, and he's taking her to Paris next month. Then she'd turn to me with that look of maternal concern mixed with barely concealed disappointment. Elena, you're 28 now. When are you going to find a nice, successful man to settle down with? The implication was always there, hanging in the air like smoke. Victoria was the success story, and I was the cautionary tale. The daughter who chose passion over profit, dreams over security, creativity over conventional success. And according to our family's value system, that made me the failure. Victoria never directly said anything cruel to me during those years. She didn't have to. Her success spoke volumes, and her occasional attempts at being supportive somehow made everything worse. She'd slip me money sometimes, calling it a loan we both knew I'd never be able to repay. She'd mentioned job openings at her firm, positions that required credentials I didn't have and experience I'd never gained because I'd been too busy chasing my silly artistic dreams. But the worst part wasn't the comparison or the judgment or even the financial struggle. The worst part was starting to believe they were right. Maybe I was pathetic. Maybe I had wasted the opportunities my parents had sacrificed to give me. Maybe I should have followed Victoria's lead, studied business or finance, chosen stability over creativity. That belief system, that constant internal monologue of self-doubt and inadequacy, had become so ingrained in my identity that I couldn't imagine a world where I might actually be worth something. Where someone might choose me over Victoria. Where I might have value that couldn't be measured in bank account balances or investment portfolios. Little did I know that everything was about to change in the most unexpected way possible, and the sister I'd spent my entire life envying was about to reveal just how little I actually knew about the woman behind all that perfect success. The day that shattered my world started like any other Tuesday in March. I was in my cramped studio apartment, working on a freelance logo design for a local bakery, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was simple but chilling. You deserve to know the truth about your sister. Coffee? Tomorrow at 3 p.m., Café Luna on 5th Street. My first instinct was to delete it. Wrong number, probably. Or some scammer trying a new approach. But something about the message nagged at me all evening, and by morning, curiosity had won over caution. I found myself walking into Café Luna at exactly 3 o'clock, scanning the room for someone who might be waiting for me. Elena Martinez. A woman in her early 30s approached me, professionally dressed with kind but nervous eyes. I'm Jessica Chen. I used to work with Victoria at Henderson and Associates. I'd heard Victoria mention Jessica before, her former assistant who'd left the firm about 6 months ago under what Victoria had described as unfortunate circumstances. Victoria had painted Jessica as someone who couldn't handle the pressure of high-stakes finance, implying she'd been let go for incompetence. I need to show you something, Jessica said without preamble, pulling out her phone. And I want you to know that I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because what Victoria did to me was unforgivable, and I can't stand the thought of her getting away with it while her family thinks she's some kind of saint. The photos on Jessica's phone made my blood run cold. Screenshots of emails, bank transfers, client communications, all bearing Victoria's name and signature. But these weren't ordinary business transactions. These were evidence of embezzlement, fraud, and manipulation on a scale that made my head spin. Your sister has been stealing from clients for over 2 years, Jessica explained, her voice steady but filled with barely controlled anger. Small amounts at first, from accounts she managed for elderly clients who weren't paying close attention to their statements. But it escalated. She was taking hundreds of thousands of dollars, moving money through shell accounts, covering her tracks with falsified documents. I stared at the evidence, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be right. Victoria was successful, respected, wealthy in her own right. Why would she need to steal? The lifestyle, Jessica continued, as if reading my thoughts. The designer clothes, the luxury vacations, the expensive dinners, the gifts for her boyfriends, it was all funded by stolen money. Her salary was good, but not enough to support the image she'd created for herself. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through more screenshots. Client trust accounts drained. Elderly retirees' savings systematically siphoned away. Investment returns fabricated on paper, while the actual money disappeared into Victoria's personal accounts. But why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jessica's expression hardened. Because when I discovered what she was doing and threatened to report her, she destroyed my career. She convinced the partners that I was the one embezzling, that I was trying to frame her to cover my own crimes. They fired me, blacklisted me in the industry, and threatened legal action if I ever spoke about what I'd supposedly done. I lost everything, my job, my reputation, my career. I've been working as a barista for the past 6 months because no financial firm in the city will even consider my resume. The weight of this revelation pressed down on me like a physical force. My perfect sister, the golden child, the family success story, was a criminal. Not just any criminal, but one who had ruined an innocent woman's life to protect her own secrets. "There's more," Jessica said, pulling up another folder on her phone. "She's been using your family's restaurant business as a front too. Laundering money through fake catering contracts, inflating supply costs, creating phantom employees. Your parents have no idea, but their business is in serious legal jeopardy if this ever comes to light." That was the moment I felt my entire world shift off its axis. Not only was Victoria a thief and a manipulator, but she was putting our parents' life work at risk. The restaurants they'd built from nothing, the legacy they wanted to pass down to their children, all of it was potentially compromised because of Victoria's greed and deception. "What do you want from me?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "I want justice," Jessica replied simply. "I want the truth to come out. I want the clients she stole from to get their money back. I want my name cleared and my reputation restored. And I want Victoria to face the consequences of her actions instead of continuing to be celebrated as some kind of business prodigy." Jessica handed me a flash drive. "This contains everything. All the evidence I've been gathering for months. Bank records, email chains, forged documents, recorded phone conversations where she admits to moving money illegally. It's all there." I took the drive with trembling fingers, feeling its weight like it contained the power to destroy my family. Which, in a way, it did. "There's a charity gala next month," Jessica continued. "The Children's Hospital Foundation event. Victoria's being honored for her philanthropic contributions and ethical business practices. The irony would be funny if it weren't so disgusting. That would be the perfect time and place to expose her, don't you think? In front of all her colleagues, clients, and the media." As I walked home that afternoon, the flash drive burning a hole in my purse, I realized that I had a choice to make. I could pretend this conversation never happened, destroy the evidence, and let my sister continue her criminal activities while an innocent woman's life remained ruined. Or I could use this information to finally step out of Victoria's shadow in a way I'd never imagined possible. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 28 years, I'd felt inadequate compared to my sister's success. Now I'd learned that her entire life was built on lies and stolen money. The question was, what was I going to do about it? The flash drive sat on my desk for 3 days, untouched, while I wrestled with the biggest decision of my life. Every time I looked at it, I felt like I was staring at a grenade with the pin half pulled. One move in either direction would detonate something, either Victoria's carefully constructed life or my family's faith in the daughter they'd always favored. On Friday evening, my phone rang. Victoria's name flashed on the screen, and for a moment, I considered not answering. But curiosity won over cowardice. "Elena, I need a favor," she said without preamble, her voice carrying that familiar tone of someone who expected compliance rather than requesting it. "You know the Children's Hospital Gala next month? I'm being honored, and I need you to be my date." The audacity was breathtaking. "Your date?" "Well, not romantically, obviously," she laughed, that tinkling sound that had always made me feel small. "But I need family there, and you know how much Mom and Dad hate these fancy events. You'll need to buy something appropriate to wear, something that doesn't scream starving artist. I'll reimburse you, of course." Even now, even when she was asking me for help, she couldn't resist the subtle dig. But as she spoke, an idea began forming in my mind. A plan so audacious it made my heart race with equal parts terror and excitement. "What kind of event is this exactly?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Oh, it's huge. All the major philanthropists in the city will be there, plus media coverage. They're giving me some award for ethical business practices and community contributions. It's really quite an honor." The pride in her voice made my stomach turn, knowing what I now knew about how she'd funded those contributions. I'll think about it, I said, but my mind was already racing ahead, pieces of a plan clicking into place like tumblers in a lock. After hanging up, I called Jessica. I want to meet again, I told her. I think I know how to make this work. Over the next week, Jessica and I met several times, usually in different coffee shops around the city, planning like two generals preparing for war. She'd done her homework thoroughly. She knew exactly which clients Victoria had stolen from, how much money was involved, and which government agencies would be interested in the evidence we had. The key is timing, Jessica explained during one of our meetings. If we just hand this over to the FBI, it could take months or even years for them to build a case, and Victoria might get tipped off and flee. But if we expose her publicly first, create enough pressure and media attention, it forces law enforcement to act quickly. I nodded, though part of me still couldn't quite believe I was planning to destroy my own sister. What about my parents? Their business. I've been thinking about that, Jessica said. Most of what Victoria did with the restaurant money looks like it was done without their knowledge. If we present the evidence right, emphasize that your parents were victims too, it might actually protect them. The authorities will be more interested in going after the mastermind than prosecuting innocent business owners who got manipulated by their own daughter. That was the piece I needed to hear. As much as Victoria had overshadowed me my entire life, the thought of my parents losing everything because of her crimes was unbearable. They'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to have their legacy destroyed by their golden child's greed. But there was still the matter of execution. How exactly do you expose a criminal at a charity gala without getting thrown out by security or arrested yourself? The answer came to me in the most unexpected way possible. I was working on a logo design for a new client when I noticed the company letterhead, Marcus Sterling, CEO, Sterling Holdings. Something about the name nagged at me, and after a quick Google search, my jaw nearly hit the floor. Marcus Sterling wasn't just any CEO, he was one of the most powerful businessmen in Manhattan, worth an estimated $400 million. His company owned real estate across the country, had interests in tech, finance, and green energy. He was also, according to recent business journals, recently divorced and notably private about his personal life. But here's the kicker. He was also going to be at the charity gala. As one of the major donors and board members of the Children's Hospital Foundation, he'd be sitting at one of the head tables, directly in the line of sight of all the media cameras. An absolutely insane idea began forming in my mind. What if I could get Marcus Sterling's attention before the gala? What if I could somehow convince him to help me expose Victoria? A man with his influence and resources could ensure that the truth came out in a way that couldn't be suppressed or dismissed. But how do you approach one of the richest men in America with a story about your criminal sister? You don't just walk up to his office building and ask for a meeting. Men like Marcus Sterling are surrounded by layers of security, assistance, and protocols designed specifically to keep random people from wasting their time. Unless... I looked at his company letterhead again, then at the logo design project he'd hired me for. I was already working for him, in a sense. I had a legitimate business reason to contact his office. And if I played this right, if I was smart and strategic about it, I might be able to turn a simple design consultation into something much more significant. My hands were shaking as I composed an email to his assistant, requesting a meeting to discuss the logo project and some additional branding ideas I'd developed. I kept it professional, but I made sure to mention that I had some unique insights about charity fraud in the business community that might be relevant to his foundation work. It was a long shot. A desperate, probably stupid long shot. But as I hit send, I realized that for the first time in my life, I was taking action instead of just accepting whatever fate handed me. I wasn't just Victoria's disappointing little sister anymore. I was Elena Martinez, and I was about to change everything. The response to my email came faster than I'd dared hope. Marcus Sterling's assistant called me the next morning, her crisp professional voice informing me that Mr. Sterling had reviewed my design work and was impressed enough to schedule a personal meeting. He can see you Thursday at 2 p.m. at his office. Please bring all relevant materials for the branding discussion. Standing outside the gleaming 40-story building that housed Sterling Holdings, I felt like David approaching Goliath's castle. My portfolio felt inadequate in my hands. My business casual outfit seemed shabby compared to the designer-clad executives streaming in and out of the lobby. But I'd come too far to back down now. The elevator ride to the 38th floor felt endless. When the doors opened, I stepped into what looked more like a luxury hotel lobby than a corporate office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of Manhattan, and everything from the furniture to the art on the walls screamed understated wealth and power. Ms. Martinez. A woman in her 40s approached me, her smile warm but assessing. I'm Margaret Hendricks, Mr. Sterling's executive assistant. He's running a few minutes behind, but he asked me to get you settled in the conference room. As she led me down a hallway lined with awards and photos of Marcus, with various world leaders and celebrities, Margaret made small talk about my design work. Mr. Sterling was particularly impressed with your attention to detail and your innovative approach to corporate identity. He doesn't usually take personal meetings with contractors, but your work caught his eye. The conference room was intimidating, a massive mahogany table surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I was spreading out my design materials when the door opened and Marcus Sterling walked in. I'd seen photos of him online, of course, but they didn't capture the presence he commanded in person. Tall, probably around 40, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're one of the most powerful people in any room you enter. But what surprised me was the warmth in his eyes when he smiled and extended his hand. Ms. Martinez, thank you for coming in. I have to say, your design concepts for our new sustainability initiative are exactly what we were looking for. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please sit. Can Margaret get you anything? Coffee, water. For the first 15 minutes, we discussed the logo project in detail. Marcus was surprisingly hands-on, asking thoughtful questions about color psychology, font choices, and how the design would translate across different media platforms. He clearly understood branding in a way that went far beyond just picking something that looked nice. But then he sat back in his chair, his expression shifting slightly. Now, your email mentions something about charity fraud in the business community. That's quite a serious topic and, frankly, not something I'd expect to come up in a branding discussion. This was it. The moment that would either make or destroy my entire plan. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone, opening one of the screenshots Jessica had shown me. Mr. Sterling, what I'm about to tell you might sound crazy, but I have evidence of systematic embezzlement and fraud being committed by someone who's about to be honored at the Children's Hospital Foundation Gala next month. I slid the phone across the table. Someone who's been stealing from elderly clients and using charity donations as money laundering fronts. Marcus picked up the phone, his expression growing more serious as he scrolled through the images. The silence stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes. When he finally looked up, his eyes had gone cold in a way that made me grateful I wasn't on the receiving end of his anger. Where did you get these? He asked quietly. I told him everything. About Jessica, about the evidence, about Victoria's crimes, about how an innocent woman's career had been destroyed to cover up the truth. I explained about my family's restaurants being used as fronts, about the clients who'd lost their retirement savings, about the award Victoria was about to receive for ethical business practices. Marcus listened without interruption, occasionally asking clarifying questions or requesting to see additional evidence. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, studying the documents with the focused intensity of someone who'd built an empire by being able to assess situations quickly and accurately. You realize what you're asking me to do, he said finally. You're asking me to help you destroy your own sister. I'm asking you to help me expose a criminal, I corrected. Someone who's stolen money from vulnerable people and ruined an innocent woman's life to cover her tracks. The fact that she's my sister doesn't change what she's done. Marcus nodded slowly. And why come to me? Why not go directly to the authorities? Because I need this to be undeniable. If Jessica and I just hand over evidence to the FBI, Victoria might find a way to discredit us or make it disappear. She's smart, connected, and ruthless. But if someone with your reputation and influence is involved, if the exposure happens in a public forum with media coverage. I trailed off, hoping he understood. You want to make it impossible for her to spin or suppress the story, he finished. Exactly. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the city's skyline. You know, I've been in business for over 20 years, and I've learned to spot certain types of people. Predators who use their charm and intelligence to take advantage of others. I've seen how much damage they can do, not just financially, but to the trust and confidence that makes our entire economic system function. He turned back to face me. If what you're showing me is true, your sister isn't just a thief, she's a cancer in the business community. And cancers need to be cut out before they spread. Hope fluttered in my chest. Does that mean you'll help me? Marcus smiled, but there was something sharp in it. Oh, I'll do more than help you. I'm going to make sure that when Victoria Martinez falls, she falls hard enough that she never gets back up. He walked back to the table and sat down. But we're going to do this right. Professionally. In a way that protects you and ensures justice is actually served. I was so relieved I nearly cried. For the first time in this entire situation, I felt like I had someone on my side who actually had the power to make things happen. But before we continue with how Marcus and I plan Victoria's downfall, I have to pause and ask, are you as shocked by these revelations as I was? Have you ever discovered something about a family member that completely changed how you saw them? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, make sure you're subscribed because the plan Marcus and I came up with was absolutely brilliant, and the execution at the gala was even better. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now, Marcus continued, pulling out his phone, let me make a few calls. By the time we're done, your sister won't know what hit her. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus Sterling proved to be an ally beyond my wildest dreams. Within 48 hours of our meeting, he'd assembled what he called his crisis team, a group of lawyers, private investigators, and media specialists who usually handled corporate emergencies and hostile takeovers. Now they were focused entirely on bringing down Victoria. The key to this whole operation, Marcus explained during one of our planning sessions in his private conference room, is making sure we have absolutely bulletproof evidence and ironclad legal protection for everyone involved. We're not just exposing Victoria, we're dismantling a criminal operation that could have accomplices we don't know about. His lead investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Walsh who'd formerly worked for the FBI's white-collar crime division, had spent weeks verifying every piece of evidence Jessica provided and uncovering additional crimes we hadn't even known about. Your sister is more sophisticated than we initially thought, Patricia reported during one of our meetings. She's been running multiple schemes simultaneously. The client theft, the restaurant money laundering, but also fake charity donations for tax write-offs, inflated consulting fees to shell companies she controls, and what appears to be insider trading based on confidential client information. The scope of Victoria's criminal activities was staggering. We weren't just dealing with someone who'd made some poor choices, we were looking at a calculating predator who'd been systematically stealing from anyone she could access. The total amount we can prove she's stolen is approaching $2 million, Patricia continued. That's federal crime territory with serious prison time if she's convicted. But Marcus wasn't content with just gathering evidence. He was orchestrating something much more elaborate. Elena, I want you to understand something, he said during one of our meetings. When we expose Victoria at the gala, it's not just about justice or revenge. It's about sending a message to every other white-collar criminal in this city that there are consequences for their actions. Your sister represents a type of person who thinks they're untouchable because of their connections and charm. We're going to prove them wrong. The plan he developed was intricate and brutal in its effectiveness. First, his legal team had already begun working with federal prosecutors, providing them with advance copies of all our evidence so they could prepare immediate arrest warrants. The moment Victoria was exposed publicly, law enforcement would be ready to act. Second, Marcus had coordinated with investigative journalists from 3 major newspapers and 2 television networks. They'd been briefed on the story and were prepared to publish comprehensive exposés the morning after the gala, complete with expert analysis and interviews with Victoria's victims. Third, and perhaps most importantly, Marcus had convinced the Children's Hospital Foundation Board to let him personally introduce Victoria when she received her award. As one of their largest donors and a board member, he had the influence to make this request seem natural and honorary. "I'll be the one holding the microphone when we destroy her," he explained with grim satisfaction. "She won't see it coming until it's too late to run or make excuses." But there was one more element to the plan that I hadn't expected: my own role in it. "Elena, I need you to trust me on this," Marcus said during our final planning meeting. "What I'm going to ask you to do might seem strange, but it's crucial for the psychological impact of what we're trying to achieve." He explained that at the gala, he wanted me to play a specific part. Not just as Victoria's guest, but as someone who appeared to be much more than Victoria had ever given me credit for being. "Your sister has spent your entire life making you feel small and insignificant," he said. "Part of her power comes from believing she's superior to everyone around her, especially you. We're going to shatter that delusion in the most public way possible." The role he wanted me to play was audacious beyond belief, but as he explained the reasoning behind it, I began to understand the psychological warfare aspect of what we were doing. This wasn't just about exposing Victoria's crimes, it was about completely dismantling the identity she'd built for herself. "By the time this evening is over," Marcus promised, "Victoria will understand that she's not the smartest person in the room. She never was. She was just the most willing to cheat and steal and hurt innocent people. And that's not intelligence, that's just pathological selfishness." Jessica was involved in the planning too, of course. She'd been working with Patricia to organize the evidence presentation and coordinate with law enforcement. But more than that, she was getting her life back. Marcus had used his connections to clear her name with the financial regulatory agencies and had even arranged interviews for her with several prestigious firms who were interested in hiring someone with her integrity and attention to detail. "I can't believe this is really happening," Jessica told me during one of our coffee meetings. 6 months ago, I thought my career was over, my reputation was destroyed, and Victoria would just keep getting away with everything. Now she's about to face consequences I never could have imagined." But as the gala approached, I found myself dealing with unexpected emotions. Yes, I was angry at Victoria for her crimes. Yes, I wanted justice for her victims. But she was still my sister, and part of me felt guilty about what we were going to do to her. Marcus noticed my conflicted feelings during one of our final meetings. "Elena, let me ask you something. If Victoria weren't your sister, if she were just some stranger who'd committed these crimes, would you have any hesitation about exposing her?" "No," I admitted. "Of course not. Then don't let family loyalty blind you to the reality of who she is," he said gently. "Victoria made her choices. She chose to steal from vulnerable people. She chose to destroy Jessica's career. She chose to put your parents' business at risk. Those were her decisions, not yours. You're not responsible for the consequences of her actions, you're just making sure those consequences finally catch up with her." He was right, of course. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are 2 different things. As I prepared for the gala, buying the elegant black dress Marcus had insisted on, getting my hair and makeup done professionally, I felt like I was preparing for battle rather than a charity event. The night before the gala, Victoria called me, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Elena, I can't believe tomorrow is finally here. I've worked so hard for this recognition, and having family there to see it means everything to me. I know I haven't always been the most supportive sister, but I hope you know how much I appreciate you coming with me tomorrow night. The irony was almost unbearable. Here she was, finally showing me something resembling genuine affection, on the eve of the night that would destroy her entire life. Victoria, I said, meaning to warn her somehow, to give her a chance to confess or make amends. But then I remembered Jessica's ruined career, the elderly clients who'd lost their savings, my parents' unwitting involvement in money laundering schemes. "I'll see you tomorrow night," I said instead. As I hung up the phone, I realized that the little sister who'd spent her life in Victoria's shadow was about to step into the light in the most dramatic way imaginable. Tomorrow night, everything would change. The Children's Hospital Foundation Gala was everything Victoria had promised: opulent, star-studded, and crawling with Manhattan's elite. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and gold accents, while photographers captured images of arriving philanthropists and business leaders for the society pages. I almost didn't recognize myself in the floor-length mirror as I prepared for the evening. The black silk gown Marcus had helped me select was elegant without being flashy, sophisticated in a way that whispered rather than shouted wealth. Professional hair and makeup had transformed me from Elena the struggling artist into someone who looked like she belonged in this rarefied world. Victoria was radiant when she picked me up, wearing a stunning red designer gown that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. Her hair was swept into an elaborate updo, her jewelry caught the light perfectly, and her smile was bright enough to power the city. "Elena, you look absolutely gorgeous," she exclaimed, though I caught the slight surprise in her voice. She wasn't used to me looking like anything other than the artistically disheveled younger sister. "That dress is beautiful. Where did you find it?" "A friend helped me pick it out," I said truthfully, though she assumed I meant Sarah or one of my other struggling artist friends rather than one of the most powerful CEOs in Manhattan. During the car ride to the hotel, Victoria chatted nervously about the evening ahead. She was excited but also anxious, the way someone gets when they're about to receive recognition they know they don't deserve. If I hadn't known about her crimes, I might have found her vulnerability endearing. Instead, it made my stomach turn. "I just want tonight to be perfect," she said, touching up her lipstick in a compact mirror. "This award means everything to me. It validates all the hard work I've done, all the sacrifices I've made to build my career." The sacrifices she'd made. Like destroying Jessica's life. Like stealing from elderly clients who trusted her. Like putting our parents' business in legal jeopardy. The selfishness was breathtaking, even now. When we arrived at the plaza, the red carpet experience was surreal. Photographers called Victoria's name, reporters asked her questions about her philanthropic work, and she glowed in the attention. I stayed quietly beside her, playing the role of supportive sister while my heart hammered against my ribs. Inside the ballroom, Victoria immediately began working the room, introducing me to colleagues and clients as my little sister, the artist. The condescension was subtle but unmistakable, and I watched several people's expressions as they mentally categorized me as Victoria's less successful sibling. But then I spotted Marcus across the room, and everything changed. He was surrounded by a small group of people who were clearly hanging on his every word, but when he saw me, he excused himself and walked directly over. The confidence in his stride, the way other guests stepped aside to let him pass, the subtle shift in the room's energy as people noticed his movement, it all reinforced just how powerful an ally I'd found. "Elena," he said warmly, taking my hand and kissing my cheek in greeting. "You look absolutely stunning tonight." Victoria's eyes widened slightly. She knew who Marcus Sterling was, of course, everyone in Manhattan's business community did. But she couldn't figure out how I knew him, let alone why he was greeting me with such obvious familiarity and warmth. "Marcus, I'd like you to meet my sister, Victoria Martinez," I said, enjoying the confusion flickering across Victoria's face. "Victoria, this is Marcus Sterling." "Ms. Martinez," Marcus said, shaking Victoria's hand with perfect politeness. "I've heard quite a lot about you. Congratulations on your award tonight." Victoria practically preened under his attention. "Thank you so much, Mr. Sterling. It's such an honor to be recognized by the Foundation. Your own philanthropic work is legendary." "Please call me Marcus," he said with that charming smile that had probably closed countless business deals. "And I have to say, Elena has told me so much about her family. You must be very proud of each other." The way he said it, with just the slightest emphasis on certain words, made it sound like he and I had been having intimate conversations about my family for months. Victoria's confusion deepened, and I could see her mind racing to figure out how and when I'd met one of Manhattan's most eligible bachelors. "Elena works with my company on some branding projects," Marcus explained casually, as if a billionaire personally overseeing logo designs was the most natural thing in the world. "She's incredibly talented. I've been very impressed with her creativity and professionalism." Victoria's smile became more forced. She wasn't used to being in situations where I was receiving praise from someone more successful than she was. "Well, Elena has always been artistic," she said with that familiar tone that managed to sound supportive while actually being dismissive. "Indeed she is," Marcus agreed smoothly. "If you'll excuse us, I'd like to steal Elena away for a moment. There are some people I'd like her to meet." As Marcus guided me away from Victoria, I could feel her eyes boring into my back. She was clearly trying to process this unexpected development. Her pathetic little sister apparently had connections she knew nothing about. Marcus introduced me to several influential people throughout the evening, board members of various foundations, successful entrepreneurs, even a few celebrities who were there to support the charity. Each introduction was done in a way that positioned me as someone worthy of their attention and respect. By the end of the cocktail hour, I'd collected more business cards than I'd received in the previous year combined. But the real performance was just beginning. When dinner was announced, Marcus offered me his arm. "Shall we?" he asked with that devastating smile. "Where exactly are we going?" I whispered as he led me toward the head table. "To take our seats," he replied casually. "I should have mentioned, you're sitting with me at the sponsors' table tonight." Victoria, who had been expecting to sit with me at one of the general tables, watched in shock as Marcus escorted me to the most prestigious seating in the ballroom. The sponsors' table was where the biggest donors sat, the people whose names were engraved on hospital wings and whose contributions were measured in millions rather than thousands. I could see Victoria frantically trying to catch my eye from her table across the room, her perfectly composed facade beginning to crack as she struggled to understand how her unsuccessful little sister had somehow ended up as the guest of Manhattan's most powerful bachelor. The dinner conversation was sophisticated and engaging. Marcus made sure I was included in every discussion, often asking for my opinions on art, culture, and even business strategy. The other guests at our table, titans of industry and philanthropy, treated me with the same respect they showed each other, largely because Marcus's behavior toward me indicated I was someone worth their attention. Elena has some fascinating insights into corporate identity and brand psychology, Marcus told the CEO of a major tech company during one conversation. "I think you'd find her perspective valuable for your upcoming rebranding initiative." By the time the awards ceremony began, I felt like I was living in an alternate reality. 3 hours ago, I'd been Victoria's disappointing younger sister, the artistic failure who needed financial help and couldn't find a successful man. Now I was sitting at the head table, being treated as an equal by some of the most powerful people in the city. But the best part was still to come. When it was time for Victoria to receive her award, Marcus excused himself from our table and walked to the podium. As one of the foundation's major donors and board members, he'd been selected to present her with the recognition for outstanding ethical leadership in business and philanthropy. Victoria glowed as she walked to the stage, clearly believing this was her moment of ultimate triumph. She'd worked her entire life to reach this level of recognition and respect, and now she was being honored by someone whose approval meant everything in Manhattan's business community. Marcus waited until Victoria reached the podium before beginning his presentation. The ballroom fell silent, hundreds of Manhattan's elite focusing their attention on the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're here to honor someone who represents the very best of ethical business practices and philanthropic commitment. Marcus began, his voice carrying easily through the sound system. Someone who has dedicated herself to serving others and building trust in our financial community. Victoria beamed, soaking up every word. However, Marcus continued, his tone shifting subtly. Before we present this award, I think it's important that we all understand exactly what ethical leadership looks like and what it doesn't. A slight murmur went through the audience. This wasn't the typical award presentation script. True ethical leadership means protecting the vulnerable, especially our elderly clients who trust us with their life savings. It means being honest in our business dealings, even when no one is watching. It means taking responsibility for our actions and their consequences. Victoria's smile was becoming more fixed, less natural. She was starting to sense that something was wrong, but she was trapped on stage with hundreds of people watching. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. Unfortunately, the person we were planning to honor tonight has demonstrated the exact opposite of these values. The ballroom went dead silent. Victoria's face had gone pale, her eyes wide with growing panic. Victoria Martinez has systematically embezzled over $2 million from her clients, many of them elderly retirees who trusted her with their life savings. She has used charity organizations as fronts for money laundering, destroyed the career of an innocent colleague who discovered her crimes, and put her own family's business in legal jeopardy to cover her tracks. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Gasps echoed through the ballroom, people pulled out their phones to start recording, and Victoria stood frozen on stage like a deer in headlights. The evidence of these crimes has been provided to federal prosecutors, and arrest warrants have been issued. Marcus continued relentlessly. Ms. Martinez, you are no longer receiving an award tonight. You're going to prison. That's when Victoria finally found her voice. This is insane, she screamed into the microphone, her composed facade completely shattered. These are lies. This is some kind of setup. But even as she protested, FBI agents were entering the ballroom. They'd been positioned outside, waiting for Marcus's signal to move in. Victoria's eyes swept the crowd desperately, looking for someone, anyone, who might help her. When her gaze found mine, the expression on her face was something I'll never forget, a mixture of betrayal, rage, and dawning realization. Elena, she called out across the silent ballroom. Elena, you have to help me. Tell them this is crazy. Tell them I would never do these things. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on me. This was my moment, the culmination of weeks of planning and a lifetime of living in Victoria's shadow. I can't do that, Victoria, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the shocked silence. Because I'm the one who provided the evidence against you. The look on her face was worth every moment of doubt I'd experienced leading up to this night. Complete and utter shock, followed by a rage so pure it was almost beautiful in its intensity. You pathetic little, she started to scream, but the FBI agents had reached the stage. As they read Victoria her rights and led her away in handcuffs, the ballroom erupted in chaos. Reporters who'd been covering a charity gala suddenly found themselves with the scoop of the year. Guests pulled out phones to call lawyers, business partners, anyone who might be affected by this revelation. The Children's Hospital Foundation Board went into emergency session to figure out how to handle the public relations nightmare. And in the middle of it all, Marcus returned to our table and calmly took his seat beside me. 6 months later, as I sit in the penthouse apartment that Marcus and I now share as husband and wife, I still sometimes can't believe how dramatically my life has changed. The girl who used to eat ramen noodles and worry about rent is now married to one of the most powerful men in Manhattan, running her own successful design consultancy, and finally living the life I'd always dreamed was possible. But let me back up and tell you how we got here, because the aftermath of that gala night was almost as dramatic as the main event itself. Victoria was arrested on 17 federal charges, including wire fraud, money laundering, elder abuse, and tax evasion. The media coverage was relentless. Every major newspaper and television network ran stories about the charity gala criminal and the sister who brought her down. My phone didn't stop ringing for weeks with interview requests, but Marcus's legal team handled all of that, protecting my privacy while ensuring that the real story got told. The impact on Victoria's victims was immediate and positive. The federal government froze all of Victoria's assets and began the process of returning stolen money to her clients. Jessica not only got her reputation completely restored, but also received job offers from 3 major financial firms. She chose to work for Marcus's company, where she now heads up their new financial crimes prevention division. My parents, as Marcus had predicted, were treated as victims rather than accomplices. The federal investigation quickly determined that they'd had no knowledge of Victoria's use of their restaurants for money laundering. They were devastated by Victoria's betrayal, but also proud of me for doing the right thing despite the family cost. "Mija," my father said during one of our difficult conversations after Victoria's arrest, "I'm sorry we ever made you feel less important than your sister. You showed more courage and integrity in one night than she showed in her entire life." Victoria herself was ultimately sentenced to 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. She tried to blame everyone else, Jessica for fabricating evidence, me for being jealous and vindictive, even our parents for creating unrealistic pressure. But the evidence against her was overwhelming, and her attempts to play the victim only made her look worse to the judge and jury. The last time I saw her was at her sentencing hearing. She looked smaller somehow, diminished in her orange jumpsuit instead of designer clothes. When our eyes met across the courtroom, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no sadness. Just a kind of closure, like finishing a book that had been difficult to read but necessary to complete. But the most unexpected outcome of that night wasn't Victoria's downfall, it was what developed between Marcus and me. What had started as a business alliance and revenge partnership had evolved into something neither of us had anticipated. The weeks we'd spent planning Victoria's exposure had revealed sides of each other that we might never have discovered otherwise. He'd seen my determination, my loyalty to justice, my willingness to sacrifice family relationships for what was right. I'd seen his integrity, his genuine compassion for Victoria's victims, and his understanding of what it felt like to be underestimated. "You know," he told me about a month after the gala, "when you first walked into my office, I thought you were just another talented designer looking for a big break. I had no idea I was meeting the strongest, most principled person I'd ever encounter." The proposal came 3 months later, and yes, it was as romantic and over-the-top as you'd expect from a billionaire who'd fallen in love. Private jet to Paris, dinner at the top of the Eiffel Tower, a ring that probably cost more than most people's houses. But what made it special wasn't the extravagance, it was the speech he gave before getting down on one knee. "Elena, you've shown me what real strength looks like. Not the kind that comes from money or power or connections, but the kind that comes from knowing right from wrong and being willing to act on it regardless of the personal cost. I don't just want you to be my wife, I want you to be my partner in making sure people like Victoria face consequences for their actions." Our wedding was small and private, just our families and closest friends. Victoria was invited, in a way. We made a donation to the prison literacy program in her name. It seemed fitting. The business Marcus mentioned in his proposal has become reality. Using the connections and credibility I gained from exposing Victoria, along with Marcus's resources and influence, we've created a foundation dedicated to helping victims of white-collar crime. We provide legal assistance, financial support during investigations, and protection from retaliation. Jessica runs the day-to-day operations, and we've already helped dozens of people who found themselves in situations similar to what she experienced. My design business has flourished beyond my wildest dreams. The publicity from the gala, combined with Marcus's business connections, has brought me clients I never could have reached before. But more importantly, I finally feel like I'm creating work that matters, designing for companies and organizations that share my values rather than just taking whatever projects I could find to pay the bills. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never gotten that text message from Jessica, if I'd never learned the truth about Victoria's crimes. Would I still be struggling in my tiny studio apartment, eating ramen and feeling inadequate compared to my successful sister? Would Victoria have continued stealing from vulnerable people, destroying lives to fund her lifestyle? I guess I'll never know, and honestly, I don't want to. The path that led me here was painful and complicated, but it brought me to exactly where I'm supposed to be. The irony isn't lost on me that Victoria's attempts to make me feel pathetic and unsuccessful ultimately led to me finding true success and happiness. Her crimes gave me the opportunity to meet Marcus, her downfall gave me the platform to build my business, and her betrayal of family loyalty taught me what real integrity looks like. But here's what I want you to understand. This story isn't really about revenge. It's about justice, accountability, and the courage to do what's right even when it's hard. Victoria didn't fall because I wanted to hurt her. She fell because her actions had consequences that she'd managed to avoid for too long. Which brings me to my question for all of you watching this. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was living a lie? How do you handle situations where protecting one person means failing to protect others who deserve justice? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Stories like mine happen more often than we'd like to admit, and sometimes sharing these experiences helps others find the courage to take action when they're facing similar situations. If this story has resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I share stories about overcoming adversity, finding justice, and building the life you deserve, even when it seems impossible. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos, and consider sharing this story with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this journey with me. Remember, you're never as powerless as someone else wants you to believe, and sometimes the person who's been making you feel small is actually the one who's most afraid of your potential. I hope you all find your own version of justice and happiness, and I hope you never let anyone convince you that you're not capable of greatness. Until next time, keep fighting for what's right and keep believing in yourself. Trust me, the view from the other side of fear is absolutely beautiful.